Hello and welcome to Hopeful Conversations. I'm Vicky Montague and today I am joined by Sheela again. And Sheela Massand has been with me before on the podcast. I can't remember what number it was. I should have checked that out.
Me neither.
But we had an amazing, you shared a beautiful story around your experience of health and health struggles, I guess, and where you are with that. I've just realised that I've got this in a funny view. There, that's better. Then people can see us properly. Yeah, so that's definitely a podcast that I would recommend checking out. Sheela talking through her kind of health issues. And was it last week we were chatting or the week before?
I don't know. I lose all track of time.
I know.
A couple of weeks ago, perhaps.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago we were chatting, and it occurred to us that I've kind of been wanting to share something around gut health with my kind of followers, I guess, for a long time, and not really known how that would be or what it would look like. And we were having a chat, weren't we? And we kind of just came up with this amazing idea for a course, which will be starting in the middle of November.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be exploring everything really around gut health and kind of invisible elements that often drive these issues. And it kind of occurred to us while we were talking that I hadn't actually shared my story of gut sort of health struggles, I guess, on the podcast. So that's what we thought we'd do today. And I really wanted Sheela to be here as well, because otherwise it'd be really boring because it would just be me. And I know Sheela's got an amazing way of drawing things out from people, I guess, in her brilliant coaching style. So rather than me sit
not
here,
too much pressure then. Not too much pressure then.
No. Rather than me sit here and just talk, I thought it would be kind of easier, I guess, to share my story with somebody else being here. So that was kind of the
well, that's kind of what that's how this course has ended up in being born, really, because we both had we're in conversation and we were talking about how much more fun it is to work with somebody else and bounce ideas off each other and just be in collaboration and flowing with ideas. And when one gets stuck, another one helps another one. And it just seemed really obvious to us, didn't it? That we could do this. We could put something out together. You know, we could really be helping people and enjoying the creation. We've really been enjoying the creation of the program.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That's part of what I think. That's part of what some of the invisible stuff is, isn't it? Is around seeing that we can be okay when we're not okay, when we don't feel okay, we can still carry on and we can reach out for support, and we can get, there is community, and there are people that will help us see our blind spots, and that's something that we're really, really keen to help people with. So I'm really glad to be here, and I'm super excited that we're going to be working together for the first time.
Yeah.
And with this deep dive, we're calling it deep dive into chronic health gut issues, because we've got that in common. So we thought, well, it's a great place to start, because I have Crohn's disease, and have, was diagnosed back in 2013, and I don't actually know your full story with the IBS, so I'm really curious now to hear how that has all unfolded for you. So
yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because I'm just going to shut this door. My dog has just appeared. It occurred to me that I really haven't shared my kind of journey with IBS. It's been a sort of long one, I suppose, and latterly it's really transformed, and so it's not kind of at the front of my mind, I suppose, like it used to be, which in itself is interesting, I guess. So I was diagnosed with IBS. I think it was my late teens. It might have been my early 20s. I can't really remember the details. It was a long time ago. And it came about just because I was really struggling, in a lot of pain, I suppose, with my tummy. Huge amounts of bloating, not being able to go to the loo easily, just really, really uncomfortable. And the doctors sort of did a few investigations, I think, not very much, and kind of really just dismissed it as, oh, we don't really know what's going on. We've done a few tests, you're fine, go and just get on with your life, kind of thing. Which I obviously then sort of tried to do, and I did lots of research about IBS and looked at all the things that could help, and took various supplements and potions and all the kind of things that are out there to supposedly help with IBS, and nothing really helped, and I just sort of muddled along and got on with it, I suppose. And then in my mid 20s, we went off traveling around South America, and it kind of came to a head then. So I was away with my now husband for 6 months, and I'd done quite a lot of travel previous to that, and had problems with my tummy, and sort of picked up various bugs and the sort of things that you pick up in Asia, and had my tummy had been pretty unhappy, but this period of travel in South America really just really brought it forwards, and it got to a point where I was just basically not able to eat anything because my tummy was so bloated. It felt like I'd eaten a 10-course meal and I hadn't eaten anything. So it wasn't even like, oh, if I eat it's going to hurt. It was literally like, I can't put anything in there, there's just no room for anything. And so obviously I lost a lot of weight, and we came back from that trip, and I wasn't really in a great place, having not really been able to eat much for the latter sort of, I don't know, 6 to 8 weeks, I guess. And I think then at that point the doctors sort of took it a little bit more seriously and did a few more investigations, and I was tested for celiac disease at that point, which was quite a lot later than when I was diagnosed with IBS. But that was done. I had because I had such classic symptoms, they did the biopsy as well as the blood test. So the blood test came back negative, but because the symptoms were so classic, they actually did go and do the biopsy as well. Interestingly, looking back now, I think I had made some association whilst we were traveling that wheat was causing a lot of my problems. So I'm pretty certain at that point I had really cut wheat out of my diet. So looking back now, I know now, having a daughter who has got celiac disease, I know how long you need to have been eating wheat for in order to have a test for it to show up as celiac disease, even the biopsy. So I'm not convinced that that was particularly helpful for me. It came back that I didn't have celiac disease, and I carried on struggling, and no more support was offered. And again, I just kind of muddled through. I as I say, I'd kind of made some sort of association that wheat was causing some, a lot of my problems. So I'd remove that from my diet, and that seemed to sort of help. And it kind of did settle down over time. I got pregnant, and interestingly, all the problems kind of disappeared. I didn't seem to have any gut problems at all. And that sort of stayed with me for a while after the birth of my first child, then started to creep back, then disappeared again when I was pregnant with my second. So it wasn't until my second was probably around 5 that I started to get another episode of really bad, really, really bad symptoms, and kind of worse almost than before, where it wasn't just my gut. I started to react to other foods. So I would, just eat something randomly, and I'd end up with hives all down my neck and up my arms, and just sort of random reactions really that seemed to be happening. I was getting a lot of headaches. I was really spotty. I just felt really not right, but couldn't really pinpoint what was going on. And having kind of really felt that I'd been let down, I guess, by the medical system, I didn't really want to go back there. So I started doing a lot of research myself, which I had been doing for years, obviously. And I tried out a couple of really restrictive diets, which incidentally I wouldn't recommend at all to anybody listening if they were in that position, because they were really restricted and they should have been done under the guidance of a dietitian or somebody with professional sort of experience. But having a degree in biochemistry and genetics and having studied nutrition, I kind of felt like, okay, well, I think I know enough to be able to do this myself. Anyway, cut a long story short, whilst I was on some of those diets, I saw some improvement, but as soon as I came off a little bit, I felt the symptoms come back. I was miserable because I couldn't eat anything. I couldn't go out to the pub. I couldn't go to friends' houses for dinner. It was just too awkward because there was so much on the list of things that I couldn't eat. And I was just really thoroughly miserable and just felt utterly lost, I guess. And then I think I remember, like, when I first was diagnosed with it, I can remember the doctor a couple of times saying to me, "Oh, are you anxious? Do you have anxiety?" And I was like, I have just no idea what you're talking about. Like, that word to me was just not something that I understood. It just was like, no, of course I'm not. Like, why are you trying to make out that something physical is something to do with anxiety? And I don't even know what anxiety is, and there's no reason why I would be anxious because I've got a job and I've got a family and life looks perfectly okay. Why I don't, and I just dismissed it. I couldn't understand what they were talking about. And then in about 2017, I came across a lady who was talking about anxiety, and I don't know why I don't even know why I listened to it, to be honest, but something drew me to listen to it. And after about 5 minutes, I just sat there and I sort of stopped in my tracks, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's describing me. She's describing me exactly. And I suddenly realised that for my whole life, I had worried about everything, and worry was my word. I understood worry. Yeah, that was what I did about everything. I worried about everything. Anxiety, no, that's something really serious. But worry, yeah, of course I worry. Of course I worry about what I'm going to eat because it makes my tummy flare up. And of course I worry about what my children are doing because I need to keep them safe and on and on. And that was just something that I did. And I had never at any point thought anything of it in terms of my physical health. And just listening to this lady, suddenly she said something about thoughts creating feelings, and that we feel our thoughts or we feel our thinking or something. And I was just like, oh my gosh, is that what's going on? Am I like, is my tummy responding to my thinking? Like, I'm always worrying about things, and I believe all my thinking to be true. And she was saying, you don't have to believe your thinking. Like, there's no meaning in your thoughts. It's just thoughts. Like, it's just like a stream of consciousness or stuff going through your head that aren't instructions. And this was revelationary to me. I was like, what? I don't have to listen to my thinking. I don't have to believe my thinking. I don't have to follow my thinking. And I just heard something in that, and I couldn't really understand what I was hearing, but there was a hook. And I found myself listening to lots of her podcasts, and just not really understanding what she was talking about, but that there was something that kept drawing me back. And then at some point, I realised that I was eating some of the foods that had previously caused some, you know, these skin reactions, immediate skin reactions that I was describing. And it was, I was looking through some photographs, and I came across these photos of reactions, and I suddenly was like, oh my gosh, I haven't reacted. My skin hasn't been reacting. And I've been eating the things that I thought were causing the reactions. And it was so weird because I hadn't kind of, it sounds crazy, but I just hadn't noticed. And I realized that there'd been this huge shift that I hadn't really been aware of, but that I understood, like I just stopped taking my thinking so seriously, I guess. And I could see that all of that busy, what if this happens? What if that happens? What am I going to eat? How am I going to eat? You know, what food do I need to take with me? All of that, or every morning when I woke up, you know, how's my tummy? Is it bloated? Is it flat today? You know, how am I gonna reduce the bloating? What can I do to, you know, all of that. I realized was like, there was just so much busyness in my head, and there was so much fear that I didn't realize was fear, but just that worry, that constant worry, that my brain was effectively thinking that I was in need of escaping from something scary. And I was in this constant state of fight or flight. So now I realize that the brain can't differentiate between, you know, someone trying to mug me and me thinking, oh my gosh, I don't know how to deal with my health. What am I going to do? What am I going to eat? How am I going to tell somebody this? Our brains don't know the difference. So effectively, I was living in this low level of fight or flight. And what I now understand about that is that, you know, our body doesn't prioritize healing. It doesn't prioritize digestion. It doesn't prioritize things like fertility. You know, when we're trying to escape from a tiger, like we would have been when we first evolved into humans, we didn't, you know, we needed to run. So when we're in that state of fight or flight, our energy is going into parts of the body that are required for escape, and not into those functions that are there to heal us, to digest food and all the rest of it. So all these things sort of started slotting in. I think I realized that I had literally been living in this, my body had been put in this state of alert, and consequently there was a ton of inflammation and a ton of reactivity. You know, no wonder when I ate something, my body rejected it. It was like, can't cope with this. And it all kind of happened without me, you know, I didn't do anything, but I'm now in this place where I seem to be able to eat whatever I want to eat. And yeah, I get bloated sometimes, but I don't, like, it's just doesn't bother me like it used to. It's not something that I spend hours then worrying about or thinking, how can I fix? I know that, you know, my body will sort it out when it's time.
There's so much in what you've shared.
I know.
It's just what a you've seen so much is what I mean. I mean, you know, what you just described about the sort of the fight or flight response is that is so invisible to so many people, me included. Yeah. So for you to have seen that and to recognize that that's something that's been affecting your physical body. I mean, I think somehow, I mean, when people say, oh yeah, stress affects you, and most people will agree and go, yeah. But it's the same as saying to somebody, well, you know, happiness doesn't come from the outside, and people go, yeah, 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 and yet we don't live like that.
Yeah.
You know, we don't live in true to what is actually the way it works, right? So to really see that stress or anxiety or worried thinking, whatever description works, I'm with you on that one. I mean, if somebody asked me, anxiety and anxious, I'm like, ah. But in the past, talk about worry, I'd put my hand up for that, definitely. So yeah, it doesn't matter what the label is, but it's a feeling, isn't it, of not being settled, not being present.
Yeah.
And as you say, the body just reacts to what the brain tells it to do, more or less. Yeah. If the brain's saying, hey, you're not safe, then it's going to react in a way that makes sense to it. So yeah, I mean, so as I say, so much and so many crossovers in your story as well, and I'm sure so many people can relate to your symptoms, going to the doctor, being told there's nothing wrong with you. I mean, how many times that has happened to me, different symptoms over the years, and have all the tests, because that's what they know to do, right? Send you this scan, that blood test, this other x-ray, this different scan, this whatever's next test, all to be told at the end of it, no, there's nothing wrong. But actually I feel really crap. I don't feel well and this hurts.
Yeah, no, don't know what to do.
Well, we could give you this tablet. Why don't we try this tablet?
Yes.
Well, what does that do? Well, it'll help you. It'll help.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's guesswork on so much of their part, but that's all they know to do. They're doing the best they can, because that's when it comes to the end of the road and you don't know where to look anymore. Then what do you do? So yeah, it's so common, isn't it? Especially with gut issues. And now there are a myriad of tests and different ways to look. But what you've come to see for you, and what I've come to see for me, is we're really interested in, I suppose, the psychological nature, the spiritual nature of what's going on for us physically. Because there's no separation, is there, between physical and mental, emotional, spiritual. That's what the way we see it is it's holistic. There's no separation. And so generally when you go to the medics, they want to compartmentalize, go to the gut specialist for this. That's got nothing to do with what's going on in your nervous system or hormones there's just no connection whatsoever. Yeah. And interestingly, what amazed me when I was first diagnosed with Crohn's and I asked, so, what about food? And no, you can eat anything you want.
Wow.
That was now maybe that's true. I don't know, but it was a surprise to me at the time. It was like, there seemed to be no understanding of any connection with anything. It was just like, take the drugs, and you're not going to ever be healed. Yeah. You won't die of Crohn's, but you'll die with it. That's what I was told in my first my diagnosis. It was like, and me being me, I was like, nah, that's not gonna. I'm not, So then I've, been on a quest for many years to be healed, and then very recently noticed that that's been getting in my way. This quest for healing is actually been a lot of noise in my head of what we could class as worry or anxiety, or I don't know, different labels. I saw it as a positive thing. Yeah, me too. And most people too, I will follow this diet, and I will do this exercise, and I will take these supplements, and I won't eat this, and I won't do that, and I won't. And it was like all in my quest to get better, eat raw, no, don't eat raw, and following different people's advice, I suppose, people who have already had a turnaround and have been healed and have a different experience. Well, they know best. Yeah. They know best, so let me do what they're doing. Let me do what they're telling me to do. And it looks really different to me now.
And I think that's a really valuable point, isn't it? It's because because that's what I did too. It was, well, I need to sort this problem out. Of course I do. No one else is helping me. Like, the doctor's not helping me. So what can I do to fix this? And I think what I now really understand, I mean, if we just look at a cut as an example, you know, if we cut ourselves, we don't then go into like huge amounts of thinking about how that's going to heal. Generally, we just kind of accept that that's just going to sort itself out. Like, we might put a plaster on it, like I've done here, and you know, we'll just wait, and we just accept that our body will sort that out. Like, that's just part of what we understand. But for some reason, when it comes to something like gut health problems, we think that we've got to fix it. And like you've just pointed out, that sort of, it's on me, I've got to sort this out, this is a problem that needs to be sorted, and I'm going to have to do it. Like, that's just so stressful. There's so much weight on that. There's so much riding on it. There's so much pressure. There's so much fear. If I don't get this right, I'm going to live like this for the rest of my life, you know, whatever. But I think what I've come to really see is that our bodies work perfectly when we allow them to. And when I say when we allow them to, that is kind of stepping out of the way and just doing what we do with a cut. Oh yeah, there's a cut. Okay, I don't need to do anything. I trust that the body will sort that out. As soon as I stepped away and kind of relinquished the job almost to the body knowing exactly what to do, and that when I really listened, the body would tell me what to do. So it might be today that drinking a green juice, for example, might be what feels like a good thing to do, but tomorrow that might not feel like a good thing to do. And it's really getting to listen to what it is that our bodies need, not what someone else's body healed by doing, because that was their body and it could be helpful, but what's really truly transformationally helpful is to just really believe, like, see that the body has everything and will heal once we stop and listen to it.
Yeah, I love that. Listening is there. I don't know, I think it's elemental, fundamental in terms of living life as a human being. Never, you know, but particularly obviously with health, there's a body wisdom, isn't there? Our body is signaling to us all the time what's going on, and what's going on both physically and mentally. And I think this idea of we know best or the body knows best, or the divine intelligence, let's say. Divine, maybe some people don't like that word, but the deeper intelligence that's, as you say, that heals, that doesn't have us get involved with healing the cut, apart from maybe cleaning it up, putting a plaster on it, you know, like commonsensical things that it just makes sense, versus me having to look at the cut until it heals, or me having to, I don't know, chant over it or something. You know, we could do those things, and I'm sure people do in some cultures, but I don't think it's that does the healing. There's a deeper intelligence that's running everything on our planet, and other planets, I'm sure, in the whole universe. There's a deeper intelligence at work here, and we overlook that fact. And as you said before, and that deeper intelligence is, if we listen, going back to the listening, if we're listening, it's guiding us, and it's guiding us 24/7. It's available to us all the time, whether we take a moment, several moments, a long time, whatever suits, to actually be with and listen quietly. Take, even recognize that that's possible. You know, I think even just the notion that really is that on offer? Is that, what do you mean listen? I mean, people will say that, you know, what do you mean? What do you mean listen? Or just stop listening to the loud voice of habitual thinking, like this, you know. For me, that would look like, what, oh, I shouldn't have eaten that, I should eat that, or no, that won't be doing, if I eat that, that's an inflammatory food and that's not going to work for me. That would be one of mine. So instead of listening to the habitual, known, keep me safe type thinking, which is what the mind does, the brain does, it wants to keep us safe, that's its job. Listen for something that's fresh and new and alive. And it may be, it's still don't eat whatever, but it comes with a different feeling. It comes with an aliveness to it, not the habitual, heavy, loud, or even frustrated, oh no, I can't eat that again sort of feeling. Like, no, I'd love to eat that piece of cheese, and you know, but if I eat it, blah, blah, blah. Now it might be, no, don't eat that piece of cheese. It's just not going to do you well today. Not doing you any good today. It's got a different voice or a different feeling to it, a different, yeah, sensation to it. And so that's what we're pointing to here, is the type, isn't it? There's a type, you know, the listening to the type of intelligence. And for some people it's not even a, it sounds to what the way I've described it, it's a voice or as a message, but sometimes it comes in feelings or smells or, I don't know, images, and it's different for different people. So when we're saying listening, it doesn't actually have to be a voice per se, but it's listening to something that you know is speaking to you in ways that it speaks to you. It could be a piece of music, who knows? I mean, it doesn't come to me like that, but it just occurred to me. It could be music, I don't know, that has a meaning, then you know what it means. So it's individual. It's like there's this universal, deeper intelligence that's there for all of us, and yet it's individual for each person, because that's the way it works. I don't know how it works. I just know that is how it works. I don't know why it works that way. Probably is more the way to say it, but it seems to be different for different people. When I speak to people, they hear things or see things or feel things in different ways, but it's meaningful for them, and that's all that matters. They know what it means. And so this idea that we have to look outside of ourselves and follow the gurus or the experts or the whoever knows better than me, I think that's a general misunderstanding in the world. And that doesn't mean that other people haven't got really good information, because they have. But it's checking in with you to see if that is what is wanted by your body right now. That's been key for me, is to really read something and go, I didn't know that. And there's some science behind something, and it's like, oh, I've never heard of that one before. And then it's checking in and saying, is it helpful? You know, the gluten one's huge, isn't it? Like, you know, is it helpful for me to not eat gluten at the moment? Get a yes or a no and go with that. It's ever changing, right? It's not just, you know, you hear the message once and it's for life. It's not. It's like, listen, just listen. And there's so much on offer when we actually quieten down and listen. So much on offer.
Yeah. And it reminds me of, you know, when I was doing these restricted diets, you know, when I discovered them and started on them, I felt really good. Like it was just a knowing of, well, this is the right thing to be doing. And then there would come a point when I just felt rotten and resentful and miserable, and rather than listen to that, I listened to that noisy voice that was saying, but if you don't stick to it, what's going to happen? If you don't stick to it, you're going to start getting really bloated again, you're going to be uncomfortable, and this is going to happen, that's going to happen. And so I stuck to it and just lived miserably rather than following the knowing, which was, this has run its course, it's not helping me anymore. So what's the next thing that I could try? And sitting back and just waiting for the next thing that came around, you know, came into, you know, that's what happens, isn't it? We then get an email from someone talking about something that we're that sounds interesting, or we stumble across a bit of research that points us to something else, and but it's being open to that. And that's been hugely valuable to see, that we can just, that what's helpful in one moment doesn't necessarily continue to be helpful, and when it stops being helpful, then it's time to just open up and look for the next thing, or be open enough to you know, get the next kind of obvious thing to do. When you, I just want to say one last thing, because it reminded me when you were talking about I can't remember what you said just a moment ago, but it reminded me of a doctor recently that I heard, and he said when he was training, they were doing their, you know, they have to go around the hospital and visit patients, and this doctor afterwards had, I think the guy had broken something, and he said, oh yeah, the guy that was training us, the, you know, trained doctor professional, afterwards he said, actually, you know, it doesn't really matter what we do, because they'll get well despite us. And I just, that stuck with me, and obviously it stuck with him as well. But you know, it's so true. Like, our bodies have evolved over millennia to do what they do perfectly. And then we come along and think that we know better, and that, you know, well, we can fix something and sort it by having this or that or the other. But actually, it comes back to that. Well, actually, if we just let our body do what it knows to do, then we'd be in a whole lot less suffering.
Yeah.
And I guess that might be a good place to stop, because I think we might have some further conversations, might we?
I think there's so much to say, isn't there? And yet, yeah, there is so much.
I don't want to go on for too long. So I'm sure we'll do another few episodes on what we've been seeing around this, because it's helpful, hopefully.
Yeah.
And hopeful.
Hopeful, helpful, and hopefully helpful. Yeah. Cool.
Fabulous. Well, thank you very much for coming along.
Vicky. Thanks for sharing your story.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it will be useful, like I say. But I will catch up with you very soon.
Sure.
Take care.
Bye for now.
Bye.